Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. It is also the last day for me to record the video on my channel in 2023. For this reason I'm gonna divide this video into several of the parts. We're gonna speak about the result of 2023 for Ukrainian and the Russian side. We're gonna speak about the forecast for the 2024 and also the latest update, as usual, checking the map and other stuff. So stay tuned and let's go. Well, first of all, let's recall the New Year Eve of 2023. Then Russia lost at least 400 of their soldiers during the Ukrainian attack on Makivka facility. There was some sort of the local technical university, and Russia converted the place for their barracks. As we see at the end of 2023, the situation for the Russian army is still mostly the same. They do not care about their soldiers. Why? Because they gather them at the same spot in the very vulnerable areas, like for example happened with the Russian big landing ship Novocherkassk in Feodosia port. It also shows that for the last year Ukraine mastered the usage of the long-range tools to target the Russian military infrastructure. The Ukrainian army has obtained Storm Shadow, Scalp, cruise missiles, and many more tools, including ATACMS. And this is, I think, is actually the biggest Ukrainian success for the 2023. With the help of the cruise missiles and also the drone boats, Ukrainian army was capable to push Russians away from the part of the Black Sea, their usual habitation area for the Russian Marine fleet. Is it a huge achievement for Ukraine? Yes, indeed. Obviously, for the country which is under the constant Russian attacks and which doesn't have the navy. Ukraine took control over the oil towers in the sector, also targeted many of the Russian air defense systems in Crimean Peninsula, the Sevastopol, the Feodosia as we know now, one more attack on the Kerch Bridge, and many kabooms in logistics spots for the Russian army. All of those actions from the Ukrainian side forced Russians to move the vast part of their fleet to Novorossiysk port and also partially to Feodosia, which they thought is more safe compared to Sevastopol. And Ukraine was able to restore the sea connection with the other countries using the Black Sea. All of that happened because of the prompt and aggressive actions by the Ukrainian army. Russia tried to interfere the Ukrainian grain supplies many of the times by targeting the Ukrainian ports and also some of the ships, but mainly they failed with those attempts. Because each time they sent their ships for attacks, they've been also attacked by the drone boats. But what actually happened on the front lines, on the ground, on the battlefields? My friends, before we continue with it, let me tell you, yes, about the sponsor and the partner of my channel. The long-term partner. We used to work together for a very long time, almost since the beginning when I started my channel. It is the Atlas VPN. In December, they came out with a Christmas deal that was made especially for my followers, where you may get the Atlas VPN just for $149 per month, plus you'll have 12 months extra. It is the best deal from all of the premium VPNs out there. And let me tell you why. It has military encryption standards, strongly securing your data and your devices from being reached by government, unwanted ads, and also hackers. I use the VPN all of the time, and for me personally, Atlas VPN is the best VPN out there. It has a security breach device monitoring feature, so it alerts me when someone tries to reach my device. Then I use the public Wi-Fi. Then I see that message, I disconnect from that public Wi-Fi. Atlas VPN is very fast. It guarantees you the best streaming connection, then you watch movies on Netflix. And also by changing your virtual location, you may get access to watch all of the movies, all of the series on Netflix platform. So my friends, please check out my personal link in the video description just below or scan the QR code available on the screen, where you may get the Atlas VPN Premium just for $149 per month plus 12 months extra. Awesome deal made for my followers, and you'll not find the cheapest price for this quality of the product. I usually do not announce it on my channel, but Atlas VPN really helped a lot, not just for me, but for the people whom I know and who are fighting in Ukraine. So Atlas VPN, thank you so much for sponsoring my channel. Stay awesome. Alright, now let's return to the frontline map. This is the change for the 2023. The blue color shows the gains of the Russian army, the yellow shows the gains of Ukraine. The Ukrainian army has liberated 523 square kilometers, the Russian army captured 587 square kilometers, mostly over here in the Bakhmut area with the help of the Wagner forces. Obviously, the front lines are boiling each day, so it's very hard to tell precisely by each kilometer, but the general idea probably you get. The front lines do not change a lot, and mostly the gains of two of the sides are the same. Well, the main difference, I guess, is that Russia was able to occupy the city of Bakhmut, and Ukraine wasn't able to propel with a counterattack towards Tokmak and Melitopol. That was the plan. It has been openly announced recently by the Ukrainian Army Command that indeed Ukraine planned the massive counterattack, and the military management didn't expect that the Russian defense would hold that strong. That is why we might say that well-advertised campaign of the Ukrainian counterattack and the counterattack itself on the south failed. Especially we saw it in this area of Orikhiv, where for the first time people around the world were shocked about the ambushed Ukrainian convoy full of Leopards and Bradleys. Those vehicles haven't even reached the front lines. What we know for now is that Ukraine sent the soldiers to be trained in the NATO camps according to the NATO standards. Our guys who got the battle experience before, for example from Magura battalion, they've got the best training, they got the best tools to conduct their missions, but they failed. It was the first sign that something is wrong with the planning of this counteroffensive. The previous year, 2022, told us that Russians usually leave their positions and run under the significant pressure, but this time it didn't work. Russia definitely was prepared for the well-advertised Ukrainian counteroffensive. And we all fall into this informational trap. The information about the counteroffensive was spread from the president's office, from the Ukrainian military command, as something very big, imminent, and for sure successful. So what happened near to Orikhiv was the cold shower for everyone. Luckily, in a short-term perspective, Ukraine was able to change the strategy for assault using much less forces. But you know what? Russia still uses these tactics. They send lots of the forces not looking at their losses. So from this huge mistake, we may see two of the main outcomes. The first one is that the modern-day war is different compared to what it was before in 20th century. The way you use the forces in a modern-day war should be changed. There should be even different training down to the soldiers in the new environment. As you can see, drone rules. Enemy knows where we are. We know where the enemy is. Attacking open air across the minefields under artillery fire, I think it's not the proper way. So even the NATO standards should be reformed. Unfortunately, at the end of the year, Russia took initiative in this sector, attacking Robotyne from two of the directions and capable to take some ground on the south. So even though Ukraine was capable to break through several of the Russian defense lines, still it's not that great achievement that we hoped for. And here we have the second outcome. Do not underestimate your enemy. If they dig the trenches, if they are ready for defense, we should estimate that they will defend the ground. And also it tells us that breaking through the Russian defense in this sector is almost impossible. One more key factor for Ukrainian counteroffensive to fail was the absence of the proper aviation. So Russia indeed has the aviation superiority over Ukraine. Would the F-16s change that? I think yes. Again, the great thing that Ukraine was capable to get rid of the Russian helicopters, which were pain in the ass for Ukrainian army, attacking Ukrainian tanks and armored vehicles from the very long distance and very low altitude. For the first time this year, Ukraine used the ATACMS missiles targeting the Russian airfields, for example in Berdyansk, where Russia lost at least 8 of the helicopters totally, plus many more were damaged. And also, you know, the devastation of the Russian bomber aviation Sukhoi 34 that happened the last week. Ukraine uses the air defense systems somewhere on the south. And here we go with one more achievement for Ukrainian army and with my personal forecast for 2024. So Ukraine was capable to organize the bridgeheads across the Dnieper River in the Kherson region. We have one near to Oleshki. Ukraine controls some of the islands over here, the Dacha sector near to Kazachie Lahiri, and obviously Krinky. Russia tried to use their aviation targeting all of those spots. They tried to use their forces, which were totally ambushed by Ukraine. It means that those new bridgeheads are really robust right now. So potentially the next year, 2024, solving some of the logistics problems in this place, Ukraine might use those bridgeheads to advance towards Crimea. And here Russia doesn't have the sophisticated defense lines. Still, they are not building those. What they did is that they reinforced the border with Crimea near to Armansk. So maybe the next year we should expect the Ukrainian offensive towards Crimea from this place. Well, I think it's one of the possible, very possible scenarios. There is one more scenario, we're gonna speak about it a little later. Now let's go again to the front lines in this sector. So Ukraine lost Bakhmut the last year. Yes, heavy losses, and later on the Ukrainian army tried even to encircle the Bakhmut city, but that try was unsuccessful, and here you can see Russia has superiority and advantage. The fights were happening here in Berhivka before, and you see how far Russia pushed the Ukrainian army. They almost took Romovo and Bogdanivka. So from one side, yes, indeed, it's the loss for Ukrainian army. We lost the city, we lost many of the settlements and the ground. The counteroffensive didn't work properly. Our guys did a great job, but still they're fighting against very powerful enemy. But at the same time, the situation in Bakhmut created a great instability inside the Russian Federation. Shoigu, Gerasimov, where is ammunition? Definitely with Prigozhin we were just a few miles away from the unexpected circumstances for the Russian regime and for Russia itself. Still, it is the great mystery probably of the century why he flashed himself in the toilet like that, why he turned back from Moscow. Well, what can I say? It's the history already that happened this year. You can see this year is very dynamic, even though there are not many changes on the front lines as you saw. For me personally, it was fun to review the instability inside the Russian Federation. Then you don't know the next move of Prigozhin, then the convoy was going to Moscow, then they shut down many of the Russian helicopters and one of the airplanes. So this stuff was really serious. Russian regime shit their pants and escaped mostly the Moscow city. But Prigozhin failed with that, and after a couple of months he failed with his own life. The Wagner army is now not that powerful force as it used to be before. And I think that it's the plus for Ukraine. So in general, the outcome is good. Plus it shows the instability of the Russian regime, the instability of the Russian system in general. I'm 100% sure that there's gonna be one more Prigozhin in Russia who would consolidate the part of the army men around, and they would try to take the power in Russia. There was no huge resistance from the Russian side against the Prigozhin's army, and many people, like ordinary people, supported Prigozhin. Well, I think not because they support the war, but the vast part of the Russians, they do support it. The thing is that they want changes. Even the Russian Z community, they are not okay with the current state in the Russian army. So Prigozhin was the hope for them to get rid of the old politicians of the Russian corrupt regime and start something new. It didn't work, but it created the hidden forces that would help to collapse the current Russian regime. And all of that was possible because of the Ukrainian resistance in Bakhmut. It uncovered the huge problems with the Russian supplies and the problems between the Russian military command, Shoigu, Gerasimov, and the private army of Prigozhin. So from one side, Bakhmut was the military defeat of Ukraine in this place. However, from the other side, it was the huge win. At the end of the year, we see that Russia wants to create the second Bakhmut for Ukrainian army in Avdiivka, and maybe finally they would be able to occupy this town. It's not as big as Bakhmut, however, it plays a greater role in defense of the area. But overall, we see the failed strategy of the Russian army using the vast forces attacking like in the Second World War. So without the Wagner commanders, without the Wagner army itself, Russia struggles indeed. The only way they see it is to send more and more forces. Yes, Russia is big, they have many many of the resources, they have lots of the population, but still it's not unlimited. Ukraine in general has many more of those towns around, and Russia is unable to waste thousands of the soldiers per each town or village. It's just crazy. They also took Marinka not long time ago, but again they wasted thousands of their soldiers because the fight for this small village was for many years. This year shows the inability of the Russian army to take the territories and achieve their goals as they want them. 2023 also showed the vulnerability of the Russian army on their own territory. The attacks on the Russian strategic bombers, the attacks on the Pskov airfield with Russian paratroopers. Russia lost many of the oil depots in many of the cities. Even the full-scale war happened on the Russian territory. Remember the Russian Volunteer Corps, together with the Legion of Freedom, how they entered Belgorod Oblast, took some of the settlements and stayed there for a couple of months. Again, it shows that the scale of the war intensifies and expands as well as on the Russian territory. For Russian regime, it would be hard to explain their people why is it happening there, why they heard the explosions, for example, as they heard them today in Belgorod. That was the Ukrainian response on the yesterday's Russian attack on Ukraine, and we're gonna talk about it later in this video. From the political perspective, I think this year was less successful for Ukraine compared to 2022. We see that it is harder to propel some of the decisions which are crucial for Ukraine, especially with the military support. But finally, the deal for F-16s was agreed this year, and also long-range missiles, cluster shells, all of that is very important for Ukraine. My own opinion that our allies should have provided us with everything of that from almost the very beginning of this war. The sooner we obtain the proper tools for defense, the less losses we have. About the military support from the United States, I'm sure that the military package would be agreed for Ukraine. And hopefully the next year Russian actives would be confiscated and given to Ukraine. That's the best way out possible. Also, the last year uncovered some of the political tensions inside Ukrainian management and also army command. So the system still tries to work as before, even during the war with Russia. Some of the Ukrainian members of parliament and officials are living in parallel reality, and the corruption is still there in Ukraine. Zelensky was forced to change the defense minister because of the many of the scandals. But if we speak in general, the level of the corruption dropped for the last year for Ukraine according to international organizations. I don't know how they do the research, but they gave the statistics. Guys, here I want you to understand, Ukraine is not about politicians, leaders or military, it's about people. And what is done by government is not always the same as it's done by our people who are fighting on the front lines. They are true heroes. I believe that in the future, the political system in Ukraine and the system in general will be changed for a much better one by those who are defending the country right now. Let's go back to the map for a while. So neither of the side is able to achieve its goals on the front line. Does it mean that there will be negotiations between Russia and Ukraine? At least we have this message from many of the Western sources, like for example the New York Times. Sometimes they publish quite weird articles, I might say. I think that for the next year the peace deal is not possible with Russia. Actually, it's not possible until Russia would withdraw their forces from Ukraine. All of those journalists who post the information about the peace deal with Russia should ask Putin first whether he wants to stop. But Putin is not willing to stop. According to the leaked documents published by the Japan agency, Putin had told to Xi Jinping, the leader of China, that he will continue the war in Ukraine for at least 5 more years. Even though Putin still fails to explain his goals of the special military operation, we might understand those. His goal is to occupy Ukraine. That's it. Not maybe full Ukraine. He will not go to Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk and probably Ternopil. At least he always said that those territories do not belong to Ukraine and he would gladly give those to Poland, Romania and Hungary. His goal is to put the puppet government in Kiev to connect some of the territories directly to Russia, including Sumy, Kharkiv and Odessa. and to get rid of everything Ukrainian, including Ukrainian language, from what I can see it. It happened actually already in Belarus, where almost no one speaks Belarus language, where there is the puppet government in Minsk, and basically Belarus is now equipped with nuclear missiles. The population of the country might be used by Putin in his ambitious goal to go further, maybe to Latvia, Estonia or Lithuania. Putin already used the Belarus territory to attack Ukraine. So he wants Ukraine to lose its identity and become the Russian regime slaves, as the Russian citizens are in Russia. The problem for Putin that he is not able to achieve his goal. He lost his best army in 2022. In 2023, they continue to mobilize soldiers, not by announcing the new massive mobilization, but by increasing the paycheck for their volunteers. It is happening already. Yes, Russia might announce mobilization as Ukraine announced on its territory, and I expect that in 2024 he will do it again, but after elections. Well, in general, many things around Ukraine are very dependent on the next year's elections, especially in the United States of America, because we know the outcome for the Russian elections. The future situation on the front lines well dependent on that as well. So Ukraine might try also the assault operation, the landing operation in Crimea. There were some of the attempts to land there with the small groups, but many of those operations failed, unfortunately. So maybe it is early to say about the big landing operation in Crimea. I've already filmed the video describing this scenario. Guys, there are tons of the things that I also might have said about 2023, but it's time to continue with the latest update. So let me show you the front lines for today and all of the changes. We have the updated situation in Verbova and Robotyne for today. I wonder what happened over there. Let's go to the timeline. I haven't seen those updates today, so it was yesterday and it is today. Unfortunately, Russia took more ground. If we check out the Russian defense lines which they built, you may see here they almost reached the second defense line. If they propel forward a little, we might say that Ukraine just penetrated a single Russian defense line in this place. After all, with the heavy losses, Russia manages to take the ground. The same stuff as Ukraine did before this summer. Yes, we took the ground, but again with heavy losses. And if we go to the eastern side of Ukraine, so this is Bakhmut, we go to the north to zoom into Dobrova. Here Russia also has the success. So it was yesterday and it is today. They've took the part of the forest. All of that is confirmed by the other source. So again, this is Robotyne, Verbova, the southern part of Ukraine, and here the Russia advanced quite a lot. And this is Dobrova, where Russia took the part of the territory. Nevertheless, Ukraine also has the attack on the northern part. We took some of the ground. Probably I told you about it even yesterday near to Ivanivka. Yes, we have the confirmation about it. Some of the drone images from the places Ukraine again uses the HIMARS munition to target the Russian artillery. As you can see, Russia tries to hide most of their equipment in the forests. So this is before the strike and this is after. It is the Russian Msta-S self-propelled artillery system. Avdiivka, everything is stable. 3 of the Russian armored vehicles tried to assault and were ambushed today. My friends, I'll share this video on my Telegram channel. I am unable to show you it over here. As well as I'm unable to show you some of the pictures from Belgorod today. Well, this is the picture in general. Some kabooms happened today over there. I would say that all of the casualties, all of the wounded people are because of the Russian aggression in Ukraine. Yes, Ukraine tries to avoid the civilian casualties, but sometimes it's not possible in this full-scale war with Russia. Coincidentally, it happened right after the major Russian attack on Ukraine, and so far it is the biggest attack on the Russian city. However, I check out the Russian media field, they are not speaking a lot about this one. Today they speak more about bullying their own artists who made the naked party, partially naked. But it was enough to cancel many of them, and probably tomorrow I'm gonna record the video about it. It is very interesting. Probably Putin wants to change the main enemy for the Russian population. Well, the Russian Defense Ministry after all confirmed that all of the missiles were shot down and some of the debris went on the residential area. Several of the warheads, after being shot down, occasionally landed in Belgorod city, causing devastations and some of the casualties. They admitted it themselves. About Belgorod, the more Russia attacks Ukrainian cities, the more it will have those kind of the responses. Alright, let's speak about the Russian and Ukrainian army losses in Avdiivka only. Russia lost 153 tanks over there. You see, 143 plus 10, 153. So totally they lost 446 vehicles. Here we go with the Ukraine, 15 of the tanks and totally 31 vehicles. The ratio of losses is 1 to 13. I think that it is happening for the first time in the modern human history. I mean, those losses are crazy. This evening, Russia launched one more rocket attack on Ukraine, targeting the big hotel in the Kharkiv city. Many of the international journalists stayed there. One of the UK journalists, as it was reported, got wounds, and totally 26 people for this hour were delivered to hospitals. So I guess that tomorrow Ukraine will respond again. You know, my friends, it happened 1 year ago. Alexander Matsievsky, one of many of the Ukrainian soldiers, was captured by Russians near to his range. He was unarmed and was smoking his cigarette, understanding that probably Russians are going to capture him. And he called glory to Ukraine, Slava Ukraini, directly looking at the faces of those bastards. And what they did, they opened the fire, killing Alexander. Time flies very fast, and many of the events we might have already forgotten, because there are tons of them in this war, but I'm sure that Ukrainians will never forget Alexander. He really became the symbol of Ukrainian resistance. My friends, thank you for being with me all of the last year. I know that I have the best audience on YouTube. You are awesome. You are not just my followers, you are my friends. Thank you for your dedication, for watching my videos. You are just fantastic. So, see you the next year in 2024. Hopefully, it would be much better for every one of us. As usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time. Happy New Year!